In the year 2154, the world was not as we knew it. The global landscape was ravaged by a relentless war between two superpowers, each wielding technology so advanced it seemed ripped from the pages of science fiction. Among their deadliest weapons were the Havoc jets, high-altitude velocity and offensive combatants, capable of striking from the stratosphere with lethal precision. Lieutenant Jack Reynolds was one of the elite, piloting a Havoc jet for the Allied forces. His missions were always dangerous, but nothing had prepared him for what was about to happen. On a moonless night, he was tasked with a critical strike deep within enemy territory, but as he approached his target, a barrage of anti-aircraft lit up the sky. His jet, a marvel of technology and weaponry, took a critical hit. With alarms blaring in the cockpit engulfed in sparks, Jack attempted an emergency landing. The jet, spiraling out of control, crashed into a desolate, war-torn landscape. He awoke amidst the smoldering wreckage, miraculously alive, but not unscathed. His comms were dead, his navigation systems destroyed. He was alone deep in enemy territory, with no way to call for help. As the sun rose, casting eerie shadows across the desolate landscape, Jack knew he had to move. His survival training kicked in. He salvaged what he could from the wreckage, a survival kit, a sidearm, and a few rations. His first priority was to find shelter and assess his situation. He stumbled upon an abandoned village, the buildings reduced to rubble, a haunting reminder of the war's devastation. As he explored, an unsettling feeling crept over him. The silence was oppressive, the air thick with an unspoken dread. In one of the buildings, he found a basement, an ideal place to hide and plan his next move. But as night fell, the silence of the village was shattered by distant, unnatural sounds. Guttural growls and mechanical whirs that seemed neither human nor mechanic. Jack's heart raced. He realized he wasn't just behind enemy lines. He was in the midst of something far more sinister. The next morning, Jack decided to venture out. He needed to find a way back to Allied territory, but as he navigated through the decaying village, the eerie sounds from the night returned, closer this time. An instinctive fear took hold. He hid amongst the rubble, watching in horror as the creatures emerged from the shadows. They were grotesque, a nightmarish blend of flesh and machinery. It was as if the war had given birth to a new horrifying entity. These creatures roamed the village, their movements jerky and unnatural, as if controlled by some unseen force. Jack's mind raced. These were no ordinary enemies. They were the result of experimental warfare, bioengineered soldiers created by the enemy. He realized the full horror of his situation. These creatures were likely attracted to the crash site, to him. He spent days evading these monstrosities, scavenging for food and water, always on the move. The stress and isolation began to take their toll, blurring the lines between reality and a nightmare. He started to see and hear things, whispers in the darkness, figures moving in the peripheries. One night as he hid in a dilapidated building, he heard a voice. "Lieutenant Reynolds," it whispered. Jack froze. Was he hallucinating, or was there someone else there? He followed the voice to a hidden basement room. Inside he found a shocking sight, a makeshift lab littered in technology and biological horrors. In the center of the room was a console, still operational. Jack approached it and discovered it was a communication device. He sent out a distress signal, praying his allies would receive it. But as he waited, the creatures converged on his location, drawn by the signal's energy. Trapped, Jack prepared for his last stand, but just as the creatures breached the building, a deafening roar filled the air. Through the window he saw Allied jets swooping in, their weapons blazing. The creatures were obliterated in a storm of fire and steel. A rescue team landed, and Jack was whisked away to safety. As they ascended, he looked down at the burning village. The horror he had experienced was over, but the haunting images and sounds of those grotesque creatures would forever linger in his mind. The war continued, but for Jack, the battle was much more personal. He had faced the darkest creatures of human ingenuity and survived, but the cost was a piece of his soul, lost forever in that desolate, haunted village. Thank you for listening to Trapped Behind Enemy Lines. If you enjoyed this story, please leave a like, and if you enjoy hearing stories from me, please subscribe and become a resident of Hill Street, and let me know how I'm doing in the comments. And I hope all of you have a fantastic night.